and then I will reshare again and hopefully share the right screen again. Okay. All right, so we're here to talk about summer release highlights. But first, just a quick introduction. I'm Jen Bowen, for those of you who I have not met. I am joined by Brian, my co-lead of the Madison admin group, and then also Squire is here. I don't know if Rachel's here. She might still be on vacation. But Squire helps us out with the Milwaukee group. As you all know, we kind of tandem between the two of the groups to host our meetings. So welcome. Um, Really, we're here to connect. We are here to network, to share our success stories, and really succeed together. Release notes is a big one. We always have lots of people come in because there's so much to talk about with a release 3 times a year. So I'm glad to be able to share some of that with you today. However, we do ask for speakers. I saw Brad was on the call. He came and spoke to us not too long ago. Actually, it was October, which seems like not so long ago, even though it is calendar-wise. Time is hard. But please, if you want to present on anything, share your stories, share your successes or your lessons learned, we would love to hear from you. So please reach out to any one of us and we will see if we can get you on the calendar.
And that would include if you want to help with release notes overviews. So it's not just, Jen and I passing back and forth. You got something you're passionate about in Salesforce and you want to cover over what's new in release, we're happy to hand that off to you.
Thanks, Brian.
Anything to get out of more work, Jen.
Um, yeah, right. I think the only reason why I ever read release notes is for you guys. So, and also for myself, make sure my org is up and ready. We also do have a list of community group friends. I wanted to mention Salesforce Saturday in Waukesha. Um, EJ has been running that lately, so I've seen him post a couple of times on LinkedIn. So if that's an area that you can get to, you might want to check that out. There's also a Milwaukee Trailblazer Club. It is not actually affiliated with the user group program, but it does seem like they get together once in a while for more of social time. And I know that you all have asked to be in person, and we have kind of incorporated that a little bit, but that is another opportunity for you. And then I also like to mention MVP Office Hours Square. When is the next MVP Office Hours?
It is always the first and third Friday of the month. So the next one will be next Friday the 6th from 1 to 2 Central Daylight Time. Everybody is welcome. It's a good group of people, just like this group, who just want to try to help each other out. So that's what we do.
Awesome. Thank you. We also have some upcoming events. There is a community calendar out there of all the community-led and volunteer events. I want to mention Midwest Dreamin' up in Minneapolis in July, and also Witness Success down in Louisville, Kentucky, in August. And then Salesforce events. These are Salesforce hosted and led events officially. Connections is going to be in Chicago in June, not too far away. And then also Dreamforce out in San Francisco. Both of those are available online as well through Salesforce Plus, some select sessions anyway. So, with that, I'm going to pause here for just a moment. Anything else anyone wants to share, you can unmute yourself. You can throw it in our chat as well. Any opportunities for employment? Are you hiring? Any celebrations? Have you earned a certification or done something else cool you want to share? Anything else?
I think this is John Eggleston at Varsity. I think my boss, Hannah Kim, is on the call, and she just came back from a sabbatical, and as a part of that, got her certification in Salesforce. So I just wanted to brag on her.
That's awesome, John. Thanks for bragging on her behalf.
She's not located in Madison. She's out of state, but um, I'm hoping that's the right Hannah there.
That is awesome.
Just call out, Baird is in the midst of making some adjustments and some growth. And if you're interested in either a contract or other opportunities, go to Baird's career site and check out what's available. It changes daily and there's lots of different roles. So not all just Salesforce. So anyway,
Excellent. Also, feel free, you guys, if you have anything like that that you want to post online, you can do so at our community online forum, the Success Community. So feel free to post any job opportunities as they come up there so people can check them out. All right. So, speaking of certifications, John, that was a good kind of segue for me. Um, I wanted to share something before we jump into release notes about the new certification experience that is coming in July. So I learned about this through social media. There is a great resource out there, frequently asked questions. There's also a great Salesforce admin podcast. Dana Walton, I believe is her name, that joined the podcast to talk a little bit more about this. But essentially, everything is moving into kind of a consolidated platform called Trailblazer or Trailhead Academy. On this new platform, we're going to see things like new, not really new, but more of consolidated view of learner resources. So we'll see any kind of like instructor-led classes, signing up for those instructor-led classes. Trailhead modules will be linked in there for resources. Certification information will be on there. Your exam details, as well as all of your registration details. And then, of course, they're going to use AI and give you some personalized recommendations based on classes you've taken in the past or certifications that you currently have. The other thing I wanted to mention is that certification names are going to be changing. They're not changing a ton. It seems like they inserted the word platform on a lot of them. So, like, instead of Salesforce Administrator, it'll be like Salesforce Platform Administrator. I did see also the advanced admin is going to change to Salesforce Platform Admin 2 to be aligned with the like the platform developer 2 exam. So or certification. So just an FYI that those things will be changing. It's pretty seamless for us. It sounds like. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that they're moving away from Web Assessor onto this new platform, but you're still going to be able to take your exams online. And it's my understanding that I didn't actually look this up, so I will have to do that, but where there might be a certification location in Madison, I know that there's always an East Side one. I believe at one of the college locations, but it's my understanding that um this new platform or this new company that they're going with has a lot more options. So hopefully that still holds true for us locally. And
I
then
haven't had,
yeah.
sorry, I just want to jump in there really quick.
Yeah.
I haven't heard more than rumor, so I don't want to start a fire, but I've heard that there could be challenges with retake cha jumping over from Web Assessor to or Criterion to Pearson. So if you've
Oh,
got a retake schedule, I would verify the validity of it after that date, so you don't lose something. So again, I've only heard rumor, not confirmed.
yeah, that's a good point. I didn't see anything about retakes. I did grab two things off the frequently asked questions about just the dates to keep in mind. So essentially they are closing down any more registrations for the web assessor exams. So they are kind of, closing that down after June 30th. And then the last day to take it would be July 13th through web assessor. Um, and then finally this new certification experience comes July 21st. So it's also my understanding that if you like have an exam scheduled, it should be seamless. It should just transfer over. Um, so just if you have anything around these dates, just be really mindful of this change and make sure that there isn't anything that you miss. Um, so just something to kind of keep in mind here. And again, exams are being delivered in that new platform, moving off of Web Assessor onto Pearson. So I think that there might be a question in the chat. So let me just double check here. So new to Salesforce, yay. Learning as a developer, great. When is this new portal going to be available? So this new one it's July 21st. So that is the new experience as it's being launched. Again, I would check out, we'll post these slide decks and everything. So I would check out the frequently asked questions, maybe listen to that podcast just to learn a little bit more information. So now we can get into the summer release highlights. But first, no, I'm just teasing you. We're gonna get there. But I do want to give you some other resources there. There's two that I pulled out. The Release Readiness Trailblazer group. Well, first of all, you guys, there's 791 pages of release notes. Yes, I downloaded the PDF of them to get that number. We cannot possibly deliver all of these all of these items to you. We really focus on the core platform, sales and service from like the admin perspective, right? So these two resources I would encourage you to check out. The Trailblazer community, of course, Release Readiness Group. It is littered with resources. You can ask questions, all kinds of things there. Links to the release notes are there. And then Release Readiness Live, it seems like they are changing the format a little bit. It used to be live, but now they're going to have on-demand videos with Salesforce Plus, and then they are going to have kind of a live Q&A session is the way that I read this from Carolyn. So wanted to mention those things out. Be interesting to see this new forum. So I will definitely be tuning in when these dates come up. Late June. So we're gonna have the release in our org well before this release readiness sessions launch. So definitely don't wait. Glad you're here today. You took the first step, but definitely take a look at release notes to what's important to you because we're not going to be able to cover everything. But there is something that now we're going to get into the meat of the release, right? There is something here that I wanted to talk about because as Brian and I were preparing for this session, um, he was he wanted to make sure that we discussed this particular release update because a lot of folks are getting this really scary, yes, this is actually my notification. Really scary failure email message because this particular update requires your APIs to be greater than 45. So basically, this release update, it controls things like the formatting of dates and times and currencies. I think addresses are in there, a whole bunch of things that could be varied depending on different languages and countries. So even if you aren't, maybe you are only based in the US. My org, it's only set up for US. We don't have multiple currencies or languages supported. But it's still wise to take a look at this update and make the updates necessary. So that way you can ensure that you are getting the latest and greatest from Salesforce. And also in the event that you might ever open up to different countries or languages, you would be well prepared. So
It's time
Salesforce
zones too, Jen. So
time
like if
zones.
if everyone's in your single time zone, you could probably get away with it for longer. But if you're in a multi-time zone environment,
Ooh,
even if you're just talking East Coast to West Coast, you can run into some issues where dates don't show up correctly, times won't show up correctly.
okay. So dates,
So
times, time zones are included in that. All right.
yeah.
Well, and
So
there's a third piece of it too. Oh, sorry, Brian, finish your
no,
thought.
go ahead, Spar.
I was going to say, and Sunil has been championing this at Baird, but also anything that is using those Apex classes from an API perspective, it's converting the date format. And if you've got systems on the external or on the internal that don't know how to handle it, you got problems there too.
Yep. Yeah, and so you can have things that are really stupid. You know, like if you have even something as simple as a formula field or Apex code that's doing this date minus that date, you could get the wrong numbers.
Ooh,
because you could end up with Apex pulling two different days in two different formats, and the math comes out differently. So, uh, if you're a small org in one time zone, you could put this off, but you don't want to
probably
wait for a long time.
shouldn't.
Yeah.
I will tell you, as a consultant, this has been 50% of my job, I think, for the last
Yeah.
month and a half, was just updating people's API stuff. Because in the best case scenario, which is going to cover like 98% of the people, all you do is go into your sandbox, go to the version for your class trigger or page, and you change the API drop down for whatever it is to something like, I know, I picked something in like 59 because it was relatively recently. And most of the time, you have no issues.
Mm,
Some of the times, you will have an issue because things get deprecated from prior releases and you're going to have to update it, which is why you're doing this in a sandbox. And the other thing that could come into play is most people never update their test code in Apex classes. And in order to deploy a change, including just the version of the test class, you need to update it so your test classes pass. So this is not necessarily a spend an hour, update a whole bunch of stuff, and push everything. It depends on how much tech debt do you still have hanging around.
But and I'll add one other
yeah.
thing too. Like, don't wait because it's actually
Mm,
post. It's already you missed the deadline. Now you're in that that window of like shoulder shrugging, and if you haven't done your due diligence, Salesforce may not help you anymore
mm.
because it's been a release update for almost a year now, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So
Uh,
get ahead of it.
Yeah,
You're,
they're
you're
they just kind of enforce it. So like Salesforce won't automatically enable this at this point for you. If you've already gotten this scary email like we did. We
yeah,
had to go update all of our API versions and everything like Brian is talking about. We tested it in our sandbox, all that kind of good stuff, brought it up as most recent as we could. And then we had to manually, do the release update part, which wasn't difficult, but but Salesforce isn't gonna like keep trying for you.
yeah,
Yeah,
Um,
and the
Go ahead.
like one thing to add, like the documentation is really spot on. Like you'll have to go through lot of it, but there's a main page where you have FAQs, and their Salesforce has tried um, their best to answer all the questions that we may have, like in terms of like at a high level. And one other thing, this scope of this release update is also um, impacting the packages that you have in your org. So, I mean,
Mhm.
you may not have any control over that code, but you need to work with your package provider and ensure that either you upgrade that package or get their blessing that this their package is following all the best practices. Like just because you have a class less than 45 doesn't mean that you will be impacted by this. If you are not doing crazy calculations on the date time fields and some of these fields, you will still be fine even if you don't update. So like recommendation is to update, but if you are like running against the clock and you are not able to do that, you can still buy some time by ensuring that your org is playing nicely with this change, and you can like iteratively upgrade your org. So there's
and it
yeah.
and it includes managed packages have to be have
That
API 45 over. And there are plenty of ISV partners out there who have not released updated packages with API versions yet.
right.
So I've I've had to harass a few.
Yeah, Sunil, it sounds like you've had some experience with that a little bit too. So,
Yeah.
thank you so much for chiming in because I've learned more now than I was even prepared to talk about from you guys. So, I appreciate that. The other thing too I wanted to mention is that there is a retirement of API. I think it's through 30. So, that's with the summer release too. So, I think they're retiring 21 through 30 as well. So,
and
um,
those are just the API or
those are
Like
the REST
REST
API.
the
API.
REST API, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Lots of
Gotcha.
API being used for lots of different things, but that retirement first, like you have an outside integration.
Yep.
No one should be using something at 30. That's like from 2014.
Yeah. I mean, even
You'd be
45
surprised.
is 5 years old now, 6 years old, something like that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Time to
I
refresh.
do have a question for you guys because this has been something we've been talking about too, and I talk about it a little bit more in like flow context. But keeping your APIs up to date is a good practice, right? Like anytime that we touch a flow, one of the things that we do is we check what the API is on that flow. And as we're making the changes to the flow that are necessary, we're also, bumping our API up on that flow. Um, any other thoughts about, best practices and things like that to make sure, like, hey, that your classes and your flows and all of your things are using um, the most current
It's
API
it's a
versions?
it's a tech debt thing.
Mm-hmm.
In your circumstance, you're in the process of updating it anyways. Update the API version at the same time. That makes a lot of sense. But I don't see a lot of people going through and say, systematically, we're going to go through and update the API and all our Apex triggers and classes and everything on some sort of regular frequency. But if you do it as you need to make changes, at least it will reduce the amount of tech debt that you have.
Great. Yeah.
If I can add one thing to that, Brian, I feel like tech debt sounds a little bit is sometimes gets not from you, but just in general, sometimes that feels like we got to clean the shed. Like it's not a priority, it's just more like a post-it note. But tech debt quickly becomes risk if you don't do something proactively about it. So even if every year as a tech debt item, you schedule an audit, just to be able to like, hey, just so we know, we've got 20% of our Apex classes are say 20 APIs ago. Not a problem, but we should be thinking about it. If
Yeah.
you don't make that an action item, it just becomes like something to push till next year, till next year, till next year. So
If if anyone's an Elements Cloud user, they have a really cool dashboard that keeps track of all your outdated APIs. So you could just look at that to track what Square is saying and say, "Oh, look how much we have out of date."
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, just like the risk, like you said, Square, not a have to post a note at risk. Well, here's a good example of a risk, right? Because of the API requirement for this particular release update. If you were keeping up on all of your APIs by this point, you wouldn't be having this scary email. But
yeah, even if you just take into consideration that a small org, that audit might reveal two Apex classes, a large org might identify 200, even if they
mhm.
don't have to be done today, that's a significant amount of work. So just having that process ensures that you're at least thinking about it, talking about it, maybe prioritizing it. But I like what you said. Every time you touch it, think about upgrading it if it's part of the scope of the story. So
Great. All right, so moving on. A couple other things now. Unfortunately, with the release notes, I don't have any demos to share with you guys today. I think Brian has one for us, but I'm going to be talking a little bit and just sharing slides because there wasn't a ton that I could have actually demoed. So first of all, I did want to mention that you're going to see a new setup option within Salesforce called Salesforce Go. Might be worth just perusing and checking out because there's some helpful videos in there, some tours you can do, some articles, all organized around features that either you have or you could purchase. So I saw that there was one in there about knowledge, and we actually are just getting knowledge now. So we started looking at the tutorials through that, and it was actually really well done and kind of helpful for us as we do our implementation. So something to check out there. Also, it's my understanding now that you can give platform users the Lightning Console app. So this kind of gives you a lot more advantage, or those particular licensed users advantage to those types of views and that app navigation through that side of the platform. There's a few things with analytics. I mean, this is so minor. I couldn't really think of a ton of reasons I would use this, but you can now decide which widget on your dashboards to refresh instead of refreshing all of them at once. So maybe if you have a dashboard that's pretty heavy and you're changing data, maybe you're doing a data cleanup or something like that, and then you want to refresh it and see the number tick down, or tick up, depending on what your dashboard is about. Uh, you can do that with a nice little refresh right on those widgets. Also, with delivery of reports or delivery of dashboard subscriptions, you can now utilize the org-wide addresses for delivery, which previously it was always the address of the user who created the report subscription that you would receive that from. So now you can kind of centralize that even more.
One thing I want to mention about that, because as cool as it is, because I hate being the dashboard center for a whole bunch of people, is it does not replace the whole who you're viewing the report or the dashboard as, that running user. And the main reason I want to bring that up is if you have someone, they leave the company and they're the running user of a whole bunch of reports and dashboards, there's nothing in the system that tells you, hey, this person's the running user. You need to go find it. Find
Mm.
them. So if you're using this, you won't know who the running user is because they're not the ones sending the email.
Oh, that's true.
So that's a note of keep a documentation for all your subscribed reports and dashboards of who the running user is, so you're not doing a mad rush when someone leaves your organization. Not spoken from experience.
Um, Maybe that's something that they will help us with in the future. Sounds like a good idea exchange item. Um, there is a lot going on with customizations for permissions. Cheryl Feldman and her team are still crushing it on delivering all of these enhancements for like user access and user access policies and things like that. I have a lot listed on here. I don't think I'm going to go through each one of them. But what I would do is recommend you can use these slides. We'll send you the link out there for it, but I would just recommend reading up on these enhancements and just checking out some of the ease of managing these object permissions, these permission sets, the permission set groups, all of those things. Um, Managing users through the summaries, they're just making things easier and easier for us to not only view these items, which we previously could always view what permissions people had through the user summary. Um, Section of Salesforce, but now you can actually like add there and things like that. So it's really making things a lot easier for you to do your work on the screens that you're reviewing on. Now you can edit, you can add all of those things. So lot faster, I think. And a lot of these things came from ideas on the Idea Exchange. So I know Cheryl, product manager of the user access, she really pays attention to that. So if you do have ideas and stuff about, hey, you know what would be cool or what would be easier for me here, post about them because she's listening. List views, couple of quick things. This is beta. We don't usually talk a lot about beta, but I wanted to mention that the dynamic related lists that we have on desktop is coming to mobile. So you do need to enable this. So if you go to setup, I think if you look up the Salesforce mobile app, you can find that selection there to enable this as a beta feature. Check it out, see if it's working well for those that use mobile. It is nice to have the same experience if you're moving from desktop to mobile. And then um, this feature was interesting to read about because I was like, oh, this isn't new. But actually, it was something they missed in a prior release, which was really fun. Um, so it's actually in your org today. But when you look at related lists, you can utilize the record types through like a pick list option rather than before. I think it was just a text option. So you could easily make a typo or a mistake when you were looking at any kind of like record related lists. So nice little ease of use for being able to filter on record type fields for these kind of related lists. And then I actually stole this slide from Salesforce and from their release deck. But I wanted to mention that for those that are using Einstein Activity Capture. So if you have the sync email on as part of the Einstein Activity Capture, emails are going to be captured as activity data, like treated as a standard object now. So with this feature, you can do things like run reports, standard reports right within Salesforce. You can utilize automations, triggers, all that kind of stuff because you're actually working with that activity object now. You can see, you can enable some of the activity data through, you can access it through APIs because of this new enhancement. So you can report on it. So analytics now, right within Salesforce, you can get that done on platforms. So previously, I think the email captured was not available through Einstein Activity Capture, was not available through the platform itself, through those standard reports, through the automation, through the API. It wasn't available. So now with this, it will be. The other thing I want to plug um, is that Salesforce is retiring the Salesforce for Outlook. So anyone that is still using that, it's set to retire, I think, in 2027. So it sounds like a long ways away, but it's just good to start thinking about that now. Brian, do you have anything to add on this one?
I just don't want the plugin to go away. I like it a lot better than I've Einstein Activity Capture, but I'm probably just, old and set in my ways.
Old school. Old
Yeah,
school.
I like having the control in the side panel.
All right. There's a few things with case management that are worthy mentioning. Apparently, and I did not know this, but previously you had to raise a case with Salesforce support in order to enable business hours to track the age of your cases. Well, now you can do that without opening up a support case, which is great because I don't know if you guys have opened a support case with Salesforce lately, but they're using Agent Force for it, and I gotta tell you, I'm not a fan of
No,
talking
it's
to a.
perfect, Jen. There's nothing wrong with it.
If you have not, let me just talk about this for a second. If you have not opened up a Salesforce case recently with Agent Force, watch the video that you're prompted to watch before
Mhm.
you start talking to the Agent Force because I was real confused until I watched that video. I was like, how do I open a case? There are keywords to say to the, I want to call it a bot. I know that's not right, but I'm going to. There's keywords.
It's a chatbot.
Okay, okay. There are
It's an agent. It's
keywords.
right there in the title.
Keywords.
It's a secret agent. It's such a secret agent that's a chatbot in disguise.
Yes, I like Secret Agent. I'm a big fan of that one. All right.
Okay, okay. Well, watch the video. That's all I have to tell you guys. Watch the video.
I
It's 3 minutes and like 40 seconds, so.
feel like I should be selling my Salesforce stock now after this discussion.
Let's see what else I got here. So, oh, Brian, I saw
Yes.
this and I thought about you because I
Uh-oh.
remember this being a big thing for you back when we transitioned to Lightning, which was like 10 years ago. But they finally are delivering the ability to close a case by adding a closed case button to the details page without creating a custom closed case button. Finally. So, that is there's still things that Classic did that they are bringing to Lightning.
Such
All right.
annoyance.
All right. Oh, and this one was interesting too. They're adding rich text and apparently media, like screenshots and stuff like that, to case comments. Now, this is a beta, it said, and I was reading about this and I was like, oh, cool. And I went into my sandbox and I started trying to figure out how to add the beta feature because when I went to the support settings like it said to do in the release notes, I couldn't find it. So maybe you have better luck than I do, but I didn't see it.
Or
So
don't you have to be some cases where it's beta, you have to be a part of the beta. In some cases, it's a generally available beta.
I don't know. It didn't say that specifically on the release notes, so I couldn't figure it out. But I
I
suppose that if maybe you'll need to talk to Agent Force about getting into the beta. But I am excited about this. I do like the idea of rich text within
case comments.
my case comments. All right, two more quick things. With knowledge, again, we're implementing knowledge for the first time because we're just now getting into it. But I thought this was cool that you could turn on feedback to help improve your knowledge articles and your knowledge base from your clients or from your, depending on how you're using knowledge, either from your clients or from your internal colleagues. But I wanted to mention that this feature is you cannot reverse it. Once you turn it on, it is on. You cannot turn it back off. So that is something to be mindful of. Make sure you test it out in a sandbox. Make sure it is a feature that you want before enabling it. And then the other thing I noticed too is that they are adding some navigation for the table of contents within your articles, which is super easy. And I'm surprised it wasn't there previously, but I'm just now learning about knowledge. So with that,
I
that is
like knowledge.
good. Knowledge is power.
Hmm.
With that, I am
Only
handing
if
it.
implemented properly.
I am going to hand this off to Brian, and then he's going to talk about flow. And then I did see that there were some items in the chat. We will get back to those kind of towards the end here. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and it's all you, Brian.
Look at that. It's almost like a flawless transition.
Whoa.
I know. It's fabulous. All right. So it's a kind of a mixed bag for Flow for this release. There's a lot of stuff in it, and there's a lot of stuff that I kind of go, that's kind of nice, but it doesn't have a huge impact. And then there's some things that make me get a little excited. We're going to start with just general Flow Builder items. If there we go. The first one, and I'll show this to you, is being able to get related records from a single get element. So, as an example, you could have a get element that is getting accounts, but is also getting the contacts related to that account. Um, you could do it in Sockwell, so makes sense that we can do it now in Flow. I've been kind of struggling with how I will actually use this because I've always thought of gets as like one object at a time type of item, but I can see there's some potential there. Um, there's also an improved way to be able to find and search for the resources that you have in your flows that you have built. And then the one that is potentially a big deal is there's now the ability to go and manage time specific data, as in you can say to this hour, as in it's not date specific. So if you find everything that's happening at 8 o'clock, you could set something up that way. Um, I can't think of a good use case for when I would want to use this. I had one where I'm like, I remember complaining about it a long time ago, and then I just moved on and tried did something else for it, and I, of course, can't remember what it is. But it seems to be a pretty straightforward um, use. The going along with the same thing as that sounds great, but I don't know why. Is you could take a flow that you built and then save that as a template. And if I think of the flows that I've personally built, I can't think of a reason why I would ever want to make a template out of it. Because most of the flows are either really specific and simple, where there's only a handful of elements in there, like a record trigger flow, where it doesn't make a whole sense to template it. And then all the others are like really big and huge, but they're really, really niche. I don't can't think of a reason why I would template that either. So if anyone can think of a good rationale for, hey, I built a flow and I want to save it as a template to be used in other flows, I would love to hear it.
I have an idea. I'm not sure if this is a use case or not, but with our screen flows, we have a very specific layout like we like to use. We like to have our logo in the upper left corner and usually like the name of the flow in a certain place and an icon, like whatever. Would that be a good use case to create like a screen flow template and then we all start off that template for our screen flows?
Maybe.
Maybe? I'll have to try it.
Yeah, try it. Let me know because in circumstances like that, I usually just go to one that works and hit save as new flow and delete the stuff I don't need. But maybe this is an easier, cleaner way to do it.
Hmm.
Um, the other thing in this is falls under the well, that's kind of neat. Is the pick list selection is now showing up as pills, which is what you see underneath that bullet where it says smart. And in this particular circumstance, they create a pick list value that has the label of smart, and then it's the actual label is 10001. And when someone selects that, it comes over as smart, which lines up with kind of how um, selecting like multiple values look like in a lot of Lightning components now. So from that standpoint, it's kind of neat. I don't know anyone who was like, I really wish this worked as pills, but it's there. So neat. Um, the big change that I think everyone's going to notice is that they've made a change to the wizard that is when you create a new flow. You guys may have seen when you hit new flow right now, it kind of pops up and say, well, tell me what the type of flow that you're creating, or do you want to create from a template? That part has changed. And the other part is that instead of the elements, we now have cards. So we can see that everything is basically a little rectangular, narrow rectangle versus just a square box. If you have a description, you get this little eye that shows up on your element, which means if we're following good flow practices, we should all have eyes. Um, the actual functionality of everything works is basically the same, but it makes this look a little bit more, I want to say journey-like, with using the rectangles instead of just the icons on the squares. So some screen flow changes. Um, we've had this already as a beta, and that's basically a dynamic screen. So you can have your screen flow where you stay on one screen and have the screen change based on what a user is selecting or based on something else within that flow. It is now dynamically available, so everyone can have it. There's going to be updates to the way that we can have files uploaded, specifically for Aura and Lightning Web. I always forget what the R stands for. Runtime, I believe it is. The one thing that I caught in this that I thought was very interesting is you can have it where someone has to upload a file before you can progress the flow. And to me, I think that's a really great thing for when you're selecting, trying to build out like a, hey, give me this and then give me that. And you want to make sure that people are uploading, say, like, I don't know, a W9 or whatever documents you're asking people to have before they can progress into the flow. Um, we're also able to customize the width, and that doesn't require a section. So previously, if you wanted to have, say, two fields within a column, you would need to have a section, give the section a label, and then you basically say, okay, this section has whatever the columns at whatever width, and drag and drop your components here. Now you can say that this particular field or component that's on your screen should take up 1/4 of the screen, which is really nice from you're trying to create a condensed but useful screen. We can also preview the screens by they list it as large, medium, small. It kind of corresponds to desktop, tablet, and mobile, from what I can tell. So if you want to see would your form look like or your screen would look like on a mobile phone versus the desktop, you can select that through a drop down and it will display that screen in that particular manner. And then the last two, which I kind of think they're neat, is being able to assign icons to choice resources. and also to display the choices in the tiles. So the above screenshot, this is the tiles. And then these are just like a regular pick list with the standard kind of like icons that you can select. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and jump into the right org. There we go. And I'm going to show you a couple of things. First, is the flow big enough for people? Is this readable?
Yeah, it's readable.
Okay. So I'm going to show you the account, the get child from accounts. Your get item starts the exact same way, where you basically come through here and say, "Hey, I'm getting a label. I'm getting this account, this object," and then there's a little checkbox here that says, "Okay, tell me, um, I want to also get related records." And when we do that, it pops up this screen where we can see the fields and everything from the side, off to the side, and then under, not under, but to the right of the object, we have this little plus sign. So I already added contacts, but if I wanted to grab a different object, I could click on the little plus sign and I could see here's the parents associated accounts and here's all the child records. So if I wanted to get the accounts and their contacts and their assets, I can now do that from one get. And then to actually kind of use that information, the easiest way I've kind of done playing around with this is just use a loop. But you might be able to use a transform depending upon what you're trying to do with it. And you can see I have my get element, and if I click on the right, I now have assets or contacts that I can select from, and then I can loop through these and do whatever I want with them.
Does
So are
that
those individual collections, or is it still just one collection that you're like that everything's embedded in?
It's treated it's treated as kind of like it's really one collection. So the get on the account is one collection, and then it's like a sub collection underneath it.
It's like how JSON can have the embedded
Yeah, it,
sub records things.
it
Okay, cool.
I kind of it's kind of a similar if you do a Socko query of select ID from account and then but you're also selecting contacts within the same query.
And the reason I ask is twofold. So one, I just was curious, but also it's good to remember if you've done that, don't go looking for the contact get collection. You have to start at the parent collection.
Yeah, you can
Dig
see
through it.
there in the manager there is no list for contact or asset.
Yeah.
interesting?
It's implied with the account. And it doesn't show even from here that you're doing it. You have to go to the actual element itself, and then you can see what you've had selected.
Are there limit changes if you start to do that?
That's a good question. I don't know. It didn't say anything in the resources. I would imagine that it's treating this as one
Get, right?
get.
Yeah.
So, and not multiples, because what would be the point otherwise?
Yeah,
That might
I
be
was
a
thinking
good,
more like, what about record count?
true.
That's a good question. I don't
That
know.
those are good questions, even I think for like the release readiness frequently asked questions. They
Yeah.
have a form out there that you can type that into, or even ask it on their group forum
I
because
mean,
I didn't read anything about that either, and I was curious about
my
the same
my
thing.
expectation would be that each object was treated as a separate collection from a count limit.
And it's weird that it's even calling that contact like outline a collection, even though you don't have access directly to it. But anyway,
Yeah, it is what it is.
yep, it is what it is. It's
New
also beta,
stuff.
right?
It's also beta.
Yeah, so
Um, so here's my here I'm going to show the little style. So if I have a terrible account type here, that's actually not the account type anymore because I got an error when I was using that field and it's now opportunity type. So I should probably at least change the label. Um, but if I click on style, I can see the width. So right now it is taking up the full width, but I can say, hey, I want it to take half. And I can go select my other one and I can say, I want you to take half. And now I have two different things side by side, no suction, which is pretty nice. And then here, these are all custom choices that I created with their own little icons. Um, so we got a little hiking, we got some sports, and then of course we have my favorite activity, which is just eating pie. If I create a new one, my Zoom window keeps getting in the way, and we select choice. We have down at the bottom a new button for choose the icon, and clicking this is going to pull up, and we have essentially three kind of categories right now. We have utility, we have doc type, and we have what they call standard, which appears to be all the icons that we get for like objects. Um, let's see here. If we, I like that the doc types have old colors and the utilities are all gray. So I don't know. What's another fun activity, Squire, that you can think of that would might have a utility icon that we can use?
I'm a big fan of the bucket shape, so I'd go with
Oh, the
bucket.
bucket?
Side note, one of my favorite D&D characters was named Bucket, so
Fun. So
Were those
there's our pretty
searchable?
little icon.
that's a good
Could
question.
we search them? Yeah, good question from John here. I couldn't
Yeah, let's.
I missed it.
It is searchable, but you have to know what you're searching for.
You have to know
So,
that the bucket
so it's
icon
kind of like
exists.
if I want to do pie. Well, no, it's not under pie. It's not even under PI. I can't even remember what was it. I can't remember what the icon was, but it wasn't. It was the pi symbol, but it wasn't actually labeled as pi or PI or PIE. So you kind of have to know what the name of the icon is that you want
But
for
if
you to
you
be able to search for it. So,
gotcha.
like, I know, hey, there's a plane. So now I should be able to search plane.
Playing poker. Ooh, that's a good
Yeah.
activity. Good.
But it's also doing it under the categories,
Yeah, that's nice.
which is nice.
And I it didn't look like you could do custom icons yet, but I assume that that's probably going to come
Hmm.
quick.
Well, I'm not sure where it's pulling the icons from. So,
Lighting design system for sure. I mean,
yeah.
that's what the ones are, but
But yeah. So those are the little nifty things. I like this mainly because of the fact that it gives us another way to kind of present things to users, um, that almost makes it feel like you're creating a Lightning Web component without having to create the Lightning Web component. The actual component to do the tiles here is called the Visual Picker. And it's a pretty straightforward, give it a name, where is it required, pick a size, and then say what the choices are. So uh, it's a fairly straightforward thing to use. So as long as you can find an icon that works, that's great. The only thing that I found as a limitation is it only works with custom choices. So like you
mm,
can't set icons for your opportunity types and use that as an icon picker, which is unfortunate. What I haven't tried yet is what happens if you are using something that already has an icon. So, like, for example, we have call type on our activities that kind of have that little icon for phone and email. I'm not sure if it will inherent those icons or not.
Brian, do you want to run debug so we can see what those look like in real life? Or
Sure, I can tell
if it
you it's
doesn't
not
work,
going to.
if it
I
doesn't work, it's okay. I just was wondering what the screen looks like then.
probably just gives you the like the same,
Very cool. Very cool.
yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to show. There's a whole bunch of improvements to the debug in general. Um, but I couldn't get those to show up. So there there goes your dot. What I there is some new things for debugging. So thank you for the segue there, Squire. Including when you're creating your custom tests, you can go through and say, hey, if it has an error, then go do this. for testing, which is nice. It's kind of bringing us closer to almost a declarative Apex test type of thing flows. And hopefully they'll get even closer to that because I don't know about you, Square, but some of my flows I get really nervous that all I've done is functional testing and I don't have anything out there to kind of force test everything every time we make a change.
Yeah, we can when you're not recording, we can talk about that in detail.
Um, uh, so other wonderful little things is just on the output. So now things are you can filter and search. The components are not cards, so instead of just this blob of text, each section now, so like our assignment here is a card with the items within the cards. There's a summary line that goes through there, and we can expand the width to be up to 80% of the page, which is really nice. Especially if you're like me and you're having difficulty reading stuff because things get cut off or truncated, or you have a whole blob of text that's wrapped and it's just difficult to read. The other thing which I was really wanting to try that I couldn't get this to actually do was to be able to copy the debug log. Because I would love to be able to say, grab a copy of the debug log and then send it over to someone else who knows Flow and say, this is what's happening. Tell me what I did wrong because I can't figure it out. But to me, this is a lot more readable and usable than what we've had in the past. So I'm pretty excited about this. All right, next thing, which I am really hard not to get overly excited about because I think I'm going to be a little disappointed once I learn more about it. And that is Flow approvals, being able to do approvals within Flow. There is some restrictions. You can only have up to 3 levels for your approval level. Um, but but the basic things of you can cancel an approval, you can recall an approval, you can submit an approval. It's pretty much there. The reason why I think I'm going to be a little disappointed is because I suspect what it's actually using is Flow Orchestrator. And my rationale for that is because of the fact that your approval steps in the record are stored as the orchestration work guide. And the screenshot that I pulled shamelessly from Salesforce's own release deck, which this is Flow Orchestrator. And the main reason why I am a little dismayed by that is because Flow Orchestration is a consumable product. Um, you get, what is it, 600, I think it is, orchestration runs, and then anything over that you have to pay for. And so if you are planning on, hey, we're going to replace our approval processes or only use this going forward, you're going to want to take a look at what that potentially could cost the company depending on how often it's going to use. Like I know some people that they're putting in hundreds of records for approval every single day, and they would blow out the 600 limit. Well, it's not a limit. It's 600 included within your licensing costs. Um, but I like I like that there is the option to start doing this because the existing approval process is so old. It's what, 20 years old at this point, I think it is. And it's
Yeah.
never really gotten any love or touch. Like it's gotten a couple of features that were there and then they removed them. And Anna, I think your hand is up.
Yes. Um, so I was looking into this and I did actually stumble across your blog article. So thank you very much for that for orchestrations. Um, if it's a record triggered orchestration, it does not count against your limit. It's only the auto launch that count against your limit.
Oh,
But the problem with the record trigger, which I just came across and just spent weeks trying to figure out with Salesforce support, your approval decisions can only be approve and reject. If you have anything else as approval decision, like pause, that is not an option. It will completely fail your orchestration and it does not help with the errors that it gives you. It gives you those fancy Salesforce generic errors, and that's all it tells you. So you don't know why it's erroring. So it just took
interesting.
me weeks to figure that out, that I couldn't add a third option to the approval decision.
Well, it's nice to hear that the record trigger approvals aren't going to cover in the list. I hope there's some more formal stuff from Salesforce that kind of covers that. Um, but even then, if I think of most of the approvals I've done, I can think of only a handful where we want them to be automatically submitted based on the record criteria. You always have the one people is like, well, it's set, but I'm maybe not quite ready yet. I know, before I hit that approval button.
So there are a couple people just chatting in our little chat here saying that it's their understanding that this is kind of a, Brad, I like what you said, special cutout of the orchestration like pricing, that this flow approvals are outside of orchestrator like limits pricing, that sort of thing. So maybe something to look into a little bit more, confirm
Yeah.
it, make
I didn't see
sure.
anything in the release notes that talk about it, but that's not surprising because release notes never talk about pricing.
Oh. Or again,
Um,
another really good question for the release readiness group. Maybe it's something that they'll cover too, a little more in depth.
yep. But that is my span of stuff.
Wow, look at us, like finishing this off a little early with release notes. Usually we are up until the last minute.
We could waste some more time.
We could.
I
We absolutely could.
want to make sure, does anyone else have any questions about what they saw? Is there anything else we can answer for you or maybe not answer for you?
Anything you're excited or particularly looking forward to? Forgot the preposition.
Always looking forward to their flow updates and making it better for the admins.
Yeah, the debug, I think Anna is gonna be super helpful. Like being able to read it easier and expand the screen out.
Brad agrees.
Yes.
I think if we've got time, not today, but since time to talk about it, Brian, we should really think hard about doing a kind of why you should test a flow and when you should test a flow and how you should test a flow like presentation. I think it would
Sure.
benefit a lot of admins to just have an open conversation about it and demonstrate some of those features. So
Well,
that,
I also know that the flow test area is something that Salesforce is putting a lot of time and investment to improve. So like I put it this way, as as the current state, I can completely understand why most admins aren't going to be going through and building flow tests, just because the overhead and the challenges behind it. But if what I hear is coming down the pipeline, it actually comes down the pipeline, it's going to be so much better. You're not going to have an excuse to do it other than you don't want to.
is it fair to say that, or I should that say it that way. My opinion has always been that flow was like the you can't or not comfortable or not equipped to write code. Here's some tools. If it smells like code, write code. But as flow continues to grow to do more than it ever was, eventually it becomes something you have to test like code because of the power of the package. So I think it's just part of that roadmap. And so I think going back to my earlier comment, like if we can set admins who maybe aren't familiar or comfortable in that space up with some successful steps, we should do that.
Yeah, we should chat.
Yeah,
I believe there's a
definitely.
trail. I'm sorry, it's a
No,
badge. Mark Ross would yell at me if I call it a trailhead. There's a badge on Trailhead, I think, that goes over testing on Flow too.
I think that's interesting, Square, because I had a conversation with you a while back
yep.
talking about that, and that's a hot topic for my team and the engineering side of the house, and when do we test it, when do we not test, how do we use declarative tools without the developer overhead.
Mhm.
I'll put
But
You know
something
what?
out there as just a complete aside. Sorry, Square, I
Oh, it's
interrupted.
okay.
Um, Before I built my slide deck, I thought I'll have ChatGTP give it a shot,
sorry.
and I had it do it more than once because I was feeling particularly lazy. It did a horrible job. I tried for like an hour and a half yesterday doing nothing but get ChatGPT to build my slides for me. And it will do things like grab images that have nothing to do with the topic of the slide, put the text so the text falls off screen, or the text has absolutely nothing to do with the content that was provided. And this is the paid version of ChatGPT.
So you wasted an hour and a half when you probably could have just
I
built it
sh
yourself in
I
that
should have built
time.
it myself.
But you had fun
Yeah.
playing with ChatGPT.
I wouldn't
All
quite go
good.
in so far as saying fun, but yes.
I was just gonna
Oh,
say, I was put on my foam cowboy hat that says architect on it. Uh, to what you were saying, Jen, I think that if you frame up the work in like a well-architected framework and start to ask yourself questions about like risk and outcomes and scalability and maintenance, all those things that go into any solution, doesn't matter whether it's declarative or not. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I would have felt comfortable saying, we know that flow will accomplish certain goals and um like prevent certain risks from being a concern because it's self-referential and it does a lot of its own error checking and things like that. But as the power grows, I don't feel as comfortable as I once was to be able to say like what Brian was just demonstrating. Like,
right.
well, we've got effectively multiple collections being gotten. I wouldn't ever feel comfortable knowing that you could probably blow up a flow and not knowing you did it without some sort of testing or just whatever that might be. Even things like HTTP callouts, like you couldn't do that a year ago. So now I'm leaning a little bit back to not test or not test, but it's a different conversation about what to test. So
Any other comments, questions, thoughts, bad jokes?
I just wanted to say thanks. This has been really helpful.
Great.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, glad we could help. And again, take a look at those resources. We'll post the slide deck and we'll get the meeting out there as well, the recording. Um, but yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining.
Yep. Next meeting's in Milwaukee Square.
we're gonna as soon as Rachel gets back, we're gonna be setting up a in person somewhere between Madison and Milwaukee, closer to the Madison side of the trip. That'll be we'll be setting up as soon as she's back in the office.
Awesome. All right, thanks everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Bye.